Up next, Tyler from Libertas Property Management. They're the property management company that I use for my residential properties. They do an amazing job. And we're going to talk about really what most of us are dealing with right now. I mean, do some of us have a few vacancies? Sure. Are some of us potentially facing an eviction here or there? Yes. But the other 90% of the properties have tenants in place right now with whom we are trying to maintain and strengthen a relationship that we want to build a stronger bond with, a stronger business connection with, and to come out the other side of this COVID thing with a much more loyal customer, a happy tenant, and someone that wants to keep renting with us. And so that's why we're ending with Tyler, because the largest part of the conversation, the biggest bulk of what we're doing right now is just what are we doing with tenants in place to ensure that they're having a great experience, or as great of an experience as possible through this difficult time. And what are some practical tips that, I mean, Tyler's got hundreds of doors under management. He's talking to hundreds of households, hundreds of families, and he's seeing everything from people where this is just a blip on their radar, they don't even notice anything different, to people who are being dramatically impacted by this and everything in between. So we're really looking forward to getting that knowledge, expertise, and just getting a glimpse of what's happening with hundreds of tenants right now. So Tyler, if you want to continue introducing yourself, be my guest. I'm going to hand it off to you. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tyler Uzelman.
Super. Thanks, James. So, I'm Tyler Uzelman with Libertas Property Management. And so we've been managing property since 2007, so about 13 years now. And learned a lot over that time. And COVID-19 is actually, there's a lot of similarities between now and just normal times, that you can use some of the things that we're using right now just in normal times, and it works great as well. So number one, and I think Sam would agree with this too, is the first step to finding it and building a great tenant relationship is screening your tenants properly. If you do a good job on that, that'll minimize so many of the evictions. It'll minimize so many of the troubles that you have. A lot of the financial insecurities that you might face. There's a lot of benefits to really screening your tenants properly. And Sam does a great job of that. I know for us, when we screen tenants, we probably reject 7 out of 10 applicants because we're looking for not just a good tenant, but a good tenant for the specific property. And you have an up and down. Well, you're not going to have tenants with cats upstairs and tenants with dogs downstairs, that type of thing, right? That would be an example of that. In COVID-19, it just sort of escalates some of the issues that you might have. So you're going to have, we found there's only a smaller percentage of people that are not paying their rent or deferring their rent, or, now that's just the first month of this. And we don't know how it's going to happen for May and June yet. Things might get worse. Typically, I think most people view rent very high on their priority list. A roof over a family's head, that's the first thing that they're going to pay for. And then they'll figure out everything else. And that's typically what we've been finding when we've been talking to the tenants. And one of the big things is communication, definitely, is talking to your tenants, finding out the situation they're in. Are they still employed? Are they in reduced hours? What's their financial outlook look like? One of the things that we've done, we put together a letter with government assisted links in it. So, a lot of tenants aren't gonna do the research to find out what they qualify for. So as a landlord, if you can do that and be proactive with your tenant and help them get the assistance that they may need, that's a huge benefit to them, but not only to them, but also to you as the landlord, because ultimately, if they don't pay you, that puts financial stress on your own household. But, you know, in Alberta, obviously we can't evict during this month until, you know, Friday type of thing, unless Jason Kenney says something differently. But deferral plans, you know, so a lot of tenants, well, not, I wouldn't say a lot of tenants. I would say some of the tenants, very few of the tenants actually think that deferral of rent means free rent. And, you know, so you have to do a little education on that. It's the same as, you know, they view landlords as deferring their mortgages. Well, oh, well, they don't have to pay their mortgages. Well, you do, but just at a future date. And so it's no different than that. And when you're making payment plans for tenants, one of the most important key issues to that is making sure that the deferral plan is something that they can manage, but it doesn't get them too far into debt, too big of a hole being dug that they can't get out of it. You know, if they're deferring rent, you know, one of the things that we say to people is we'll work out a plan to defer rent, but pay what you can as soon as you can so that it keeps that hole as small as possible. And that's just to manage future financial difficulties that they come, because, you know, their rent deferral is just one thing. But, you know, if they start having health issues or other financial issues or family issues, you know, that's, and when I said earlier about COVID-19 as sort of an escalated version of some things that happen normally, you can find a tenant that is like the ideal tenant, the perfect tenant, great references, great work history, financially stable, you know, all that kind of stuff. And you could rent to them, in 6 months down the road, everything could change. They can lose their jobs. They could have major health issues that has it so that they can't work. Family issues, they can get divorced, and then all of a sudden now that provides a whole new level of financial. So those are things that happen typically, but you handle those pretty much the same way that you handle things with the COVID-19. And really what it comes down to, I mentioned this in the intro, that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And you really want to communicate with your tenants and find out, you know, how can you help? How can you work with them? And they just want to know that, you know, you're not going to kick them out and that you're on their side. And that's one of the things. But along with that, you also have to protect your own business. And I'll give you an example of that. So we have some tenants that their leases are coming due. We do only fixed term leases, and the term is coming due like this month or next month. And they've come back and they've said, you know, can we just extend for another 2 months? There's pros and cons to that, and it has to be weighed with the landlords. Our typical response is, you know, we'd like to renew for a whole year if you're going to renew. The reason being is you renew for 2 or 3 months. Now you're getting into the fall, and when they leave the property, it's going to be a lot harder for you to re-rent the property outside of the peak season. And, you know, we're still doing showings today. We're showing properties. Most of the showings that we do are vacant properties. The tenanted ones, you know, you have to use a little bit more of discretion and precautions there. And even with the vacant ones, you have to, you know, one person in the property at a time. You open all the doors, you put all the lights on before anybody comes in, so that, and then give them instruction that you come in, you don't touch anything, you walk around. If you have questions, you can ask. But you know, you try to keep everybody safe during this time. And a lot of people have expectations about that. So building deferral plans, you know, giving your tenants links to government programs, those are important things. Now, when I come back to fixed leases, one of the things you have to be careful of too is, Don mentioned overholding rent. So at the end of a fixed term, the tenant is supposed to exit the property if you don't have prior agreements made. So on tomorrow at noon, people should be leaving their properties. If they don't leave the property, but then they pay you rent, you're actually accepting the lease to go into a periodic lease. So you don't want to accept rent. So if they email transfer money to you, just keep it on pause. You don't have to accept it. There's 30 days that you can accept it unless they retract it, but get a new lease in place or else you automatically convert it to a periodic lease. And that's an important thing to know so that you don't relinquish your rights as a landlord. So let's see what other kind of notes I have here. So I mentioned, you know, starts right at the beginning. Good relationship with the tenant starts right at the showings, building a relationship, getting to know them getting to know you. Spending time in a move-in inspection. You know, a lot of landlords just try to in and out as fast as they can. Okay, I'm done. Here you go. Thanks. Take an hour, spend some time there, get to know them so that they get to know you, they know your personality, if you have a good personality. But, you know, it's important to just build that relationship. And a lot of relationships are built face-to-face, kneecap to kneecap. Tenant management software, you know, that's another one. So let's say you're a small landlord, there is plenty of software out there that you can use that your tenants would have their own portal where they can go on there, they can see their ledgers, they can see their leases, they can submit maintenance requests, all that kind of stuff. And even if you're a larger landlord, there's great software for that. We use one, there's multiple ones that are like that, that really use technology to the fullest to build those relationships. Addressing concerns on a timely fashion, you know, that's important too. Obviously the emergencies, you know, when there's the water tank or the furnace goes out when it's minus 30, those are critical to deal with as soon as you can. But leaky taps, you know, just little things like that. Those are things too that you don't want to wait too long. And a lot of it is just how you handle that of building a relationship. Now, during this time, we've noticed that our maintenance department has gone down quite a bit because a lot of tenants don't want people coming in their home during this time. So you have to understand that during this time as well. And that's just sort of respecting their wishes. You know, if it's not an urgent issue, and it can wait till after this COVID crisis is taken care of, then that's great. You know, that helps quite a bit. And that just shows the tenant that you're respecting their space and their health as well. Renewing, you know, I've talked about this in the past about, you know, we do fixed terms 3 months out before the end of the term. That's when we start talking to them about renewing their leases. And the reason we do that is multiple. So one is, if you wait to the last month, they may have already made their mind up a month and a half in that they're going to move. But if you work out 3 months, there's very few tenants that think 3 months in advance as to, okay, what they're doing. So if you give them the option right off the bat, chances are they'll take that option over taking something else. You know, if the rent's not going up, or if it's going up marginally or going down, you know, it gives them a little bit of time to think about, but we don't give them a lot of time to think about that. We give them, you know, a month to think about that. And then, you know, a little bit of time to get paperwork together and whatnot. But if we don't have a lease in place within 30 days or I'd say 30 to 45 days out from the end of the lease, then we start marketing it, because you want to mitigate your vacancy loss as well, right? So if you wait to the last month and then it's back and forth, oh yeah, I don't know if I'm going to move. Yeah, okay, yeah, I'll stay. No, I've decided not to stay. You might only have 7 days to market a property to find a tenant. And then you're just increasing your chance of having vacancy. So the more time, the more advance notice you can get, the better. And then again, I talked about just being careful of overholding rent and if you wait to the last minute and it goes into overholding, you accept rent, and now it's in periodic. And then if you do want to get them out, it is a little bit tougher. Let's see here. Yeah, so really when it comes down to it, and I'll sort of close with this because I see there's a lot of chat questions on there, and I think a lot of the education happens through the questions and answers in this type of thing, because property management, there's so many different variables and possibilities that to have one little conversation about it, you could do a whole weekend course on property management because there's so many different variables. But when it comes down to it, you have to give respect before you get respect. You have to have open lines of communication, and you have to show them that you care. I think Dawn mentioned it earlier about, the perception is that the landlords are the evil money hoarding, villains in society. And that's just not the case. The landlords are the ones that are providing essential services for people. And it's in the tough times that, the people that feel that they're being taken advantage of, that's when they speak up. And so if you build those relationships, one of the things in the sales game that people say all the time is people don't quit on friends. So if you build a relationship and it's a friendly relationship, that'll get you through a lot of rough times. And this is definitely one of those rough times. So building relationships, hopefully you started it a long time before COVID even came, so that you built up this trust bank account, and during the COVID, that's coaching you through everything. So James, if you want to come back on now, and then we'll start answering some questions and see where it goes from there.
All right. That was awesome. Thanks, Tyler. That was a terrific presentation. So I think, yeah, let's open it up to Q&A.
So on the chat here, James, I'm just going to comment on a couple of them here. So
okay, you've already got the chat window open.
Yeah. So what tenant software do we use? We use one called PropertyWare. Great software, very scalable. But there's other ones out there. Buildium is another one. If you just Google tenant property software, there's tons of them that come up, and really you're just trying to find one that has the features that you're looking for. You may not want a maintenance whole department side of things, or you may keep your rent collection in Quicken or something like that, your accounting separate. But a lot of the software, everything is integrated. And it's fantastic. So propertyware.com, I think that's where you can find that out. So that was the second one. So PropertyWare is also scalable. You can have a package that's like 10 properties, might be like $25 a month, or you could have like, I think we pay like $800 a month for like 400 properties. So it all depends on what scale you are, but it's definitely, the cost is per unit or per chunk of units type of thing. Management fees, ours are 10% of collected rents. So if a property is vacant, we don't get paid. And if we put a tenant in that doesn't pay, we don't get paid. So we've got a pretty big incentive to fill vacancy and also fill it with quality tenants. Contact info, if you go to the Mogul website, under sponsors, we're on there, or just Google our name, Libertas Property Management. You'll be able to find us there too.
All right, does anybody else have any questions? Oh, somebody just asked what the cost for placing a tenant is, if you guys do tenant placement.
We don't do tenant placement. We leave that up to Sam as the professional. For us, it's sort of a conflict of interest for us if we're charging somebody just to find a tenant. We feel that's conflict of interest for our landlords that we manage full time. We want to do the best job that we can for them.
Okay, well, there you go. All right, so Tyler, that was fantastic. I mean, I tend to agree with you that while the COVID situation is new, the only thing that's really new about it so far is that we have to practice some public health protocols. But, you know, we're treating it like a slower market. All of the same strategies that have applied in slower markets apply now. And it's all about taking that time more than ever. You know, I mean, that was one of the common themes is like, don't rush things. Spend an extra 15 minutes giving someone a personal touch, shooting the breeze, getting to know them. You know, these things matter right now. And it's one of those things where that time translates into caring, and that caring translates into a stronger relationship. So I appreciate that you really just talked about the practical what to do to build a solid relationship with your tenant.